Okay, wait. I think I
Wait,
got it.
you sound different now.
Good. Oh fuck. Okay. Right. Oh
You
yeah,
and your
because I
wrong
connect.
microphone and stereo set on Discord, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah. Right. Right. Exactly. Well, I don't do
There we
this
go.
often too. Yeah, I was on my webcam mic. Fuck that shit.
Okay, yeah, that explains it. There we go. That's the
Yeah.
crisp, yeah, Blue
Good.
Yeti sound. And you can hear me just fine?
Yep. Yep. Perfect.
Nice. Well, what's up?
All right. So I wanted to talk to you about the whole Linke thing and Germany, because that's really like the conversation with Three Arrows was nice, although I sort of noticed some bits of information that's severely lacking from that conversation, which rubbed me the wrong way because I've been following sort of Central and Eastern European politics for a while, and certain things were not mentioned in that conversation which should have been mentioned. So that's what I'd like to talk about now.
Sure, yeah. I'm not exactly an expert on Germany, so I'll pretty much just stupidly accept whatever I'm told by people I trust. Um, a group which I suppose you belong to. You know, I guess a couple of months ago I would have asked you to shout yourself out, but now all I can ask is that you shout me out on your now much larger YouTube channel, you fucking animal. How's that going for
Uh,
you?
well, I'm a patron of smaller channels. What can I say?
I appreciate that. Seriously,
I,
you blew up.
yeah, it's pretty fucking insane.
I
I know, right?
yeah, I'd watched some of your videos before, but I hadn't actually got around to watching all that, and I binged watched like all of your videos. Um about a week ago, I think, while playing Diablo. Very well, by the way. Very good Diablo, high quality playing. And
Yeah,
it
cool.
it's not surprising to me that you blew up. You put together like pretty good scripts and edit them together in a really short length of time. How do you have an editor, or do you put all this stuff together yourself?
No, I just do it myself, basically. Like I'm an expert at cutting corners, which works actually really well if you're a YouTuber. And so what I do is basically the backbone, the skeleton of the video is actually a glorified PowerPoint presentation on which I keep building. And so basically from start to finish, I can produce a video from like between like 8 a.m. and like 6 p.m.
That
So that's
slaps.
like from
You're
some script to first character on a script to uploading.
you're putting out a video essay like every like week to week and a half, which is insane, you know? I think that a
Yeah, I
lot of
like
people
doing
on the
it.
left, like you know, when we think of like video essays, we think of like Contra, like yes, Queen, once every 6 months, yes, please. But
Yeah, like Sean
yeah,
Rage Bomber guy. Yeah.
it's cool going faster than that, I think.
Yeah, because I mean, I just like doing it. So I'm doing it at this rate because I just have lots of topics in my head. So the next one is coming soon, by the way. The Anarcho-Capitalism in Practice Part 2, Theocracy Edition, featuring well, not Stefan Molyneux, but Stéphane Montreux.
Yeah,
Let's say.
wait, is that
So
okay? Gotcha. You know, I had a phenomenal conversation with him a while ago. I don't know if you ever saw it, but he seemed to believe that innovative people have a kind of magic that nobody else has, and that the Industrial Revolution started when it did and not earlier because people suddenly wanted to because of their morals, as opposed to the
yeah,
past several thousand years where their morals just made them not invent the steam engine.
yeah, I saw that fucking debate. Yeah, it
That's a
was
good
something
one.
to
I had
behold.
a good time with that one. It's fucking
Yeah,
wild.
Jesus fucking Christ. Yeah, I mean he's like starting to get dementia or something. I don't know, like in his egg head. What's
He,
going on there?
he's his deplatforming sure fucked him. For somebody who spent his entire career building alternative systems of payment and like media hosting, he sure got absolutely just tunneled
Yeah,
by
I've
being
heard that.
deplatformed.
Yeah, I've heard that now he's on BitChute or something.
Yeah, I think he's get like 1,000 views per video or whatever. I mean, it's like nothing, you know.
Yeah. Oh well.
You can
I mean,
actually.
his channel was like. Go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. I'm just saying you can actually see where his relevance charts are on the Google Trends stuff. I mean, he's had like a burst or two, but
Yeah.
over the past 12 months, like holy shit, he's flatlined. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the marketplace of ideas. It's a meritocracy. What can you say?
Yeah. Well, it's rough out here, living under the thumb of tech companies. But anyway, I don't mean to distract you. With regards to Die Linke, so just to summarize for chat, because I don't know how many of them were up in this arc, but essentially, late one night, I made some comments about the German left-leaning political party called Die Linke, which literally just means the left. And my statements were, I was temporarily possessed by an impish devil, which possessed me to talk about things that I know nothing about in a very confident voice. And I expelled the demon, but not before misinformation was spread. So in penance, I had 3 arrows on, Dan arrows, who talked about some of this stuff, and talked about sort of the history of Germany and Die Linke a little. But you took issue with some of that. So what do you feel was missing?
Right. So let me unpack this. First of all, like I think, if correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the biggest point of contention with your original take was that you said that there's sort of this Nazgul vortex exchange between the two parties, like the AfD and the Linke, so the far right and the far left, and they didn't really exist. So, like, there was a big one.
Yeah, as my initial impression was that like the reason why there was voter exchange between Die Linke and the AfD, which is their far right part, your far right party, I guess, um, was because I felt like there might be some sort of shiftlessness with the very like radical populists in the country who might have been sort of a descendant of the ML tradition, where they don't really care if it's far left or far right. They're just like nationalist conservatives, you know?
Yeah, and I'm here to say that you are actually partly correct. Like you just weren't on the correct level, but I'm going to explain why. And just for the record, by the way, I'm not German. I do currently live in Sachsen, so the eye of the heartland. So it's rough out here, but I'm Hungarian by birth. So, but I do speak German, so like I am plugged into the environment around here. And so, first off, the so-called red boomers is definitely a thing that you mentioned. I just want to put that out there. There are definitely old people in like Central Eastern Europe who long for the Soviet Union, a glory era past. Like these people are usually like very, very like authoritarian minded. But the Linke isn't as much of an old people's party really. The Linke's electorate is actually pretty evenly spread out among demographics. I can give you some links if you want to.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, I won't bog it down by reading them now, but yeah, if you could provide anything, I'd love to see.
Or like just like graphs and stuff, just to illustrate the point. It's from Tagesschau, and if you go down, it's the this magenta thingy. If you go down a bit.
Gotcha.
So
okay, here we go. English. Translate to English. Thank you.
Yep. Yankees.
Oh, hush.
Yeah, so as you can see, it's pretty evenly spread out with like a heavier.
This says Stimmanteil der Linkspartei nach.
Stimmanteile der Linkspartei nach Altersgruppen. So
okay, then I have the right one. Okay, gotcha.
Right. That's it. So as you can see, it's like an even spread kind of. So so we cannot make the point that it's like a boomer party because it really isn't. The boomer parties are the SPD, the Social Democrats, and the CDU, CSU, who are the traditional right-wing conservatives. Right. And so my problem actually with so just to circle back to the original point. So my problem with the 3 arrows video really was that I felt like Die Linke was given a pass really, and was treated as this little protest party, which is, leftist, they're silly and awkward, they're a bit incompetent, but their heart is in the right place and they're trying, etc. And then, 3 arrows didn't really elaborate and then just moved on to the AfD. So as far as I remember, most of the video was discussing the AfD and like non-Linke stuff. And I'd like to make the point here that Linke is literal cancer, just like the AfD, and is potentially incredibly harmful to leftism in general because they aren't fucking leftists. Yeah, this you can quote me on that. Linke is not fucking leftist, or at least they have this aesthetic of leftism, but and they are super progressive in certain aspects. But then there's this whole other half of the party which I'm going to talk.
I feel like I'm gonna potentially get in trouble for this, because I'm just an idiot passenger. You see, you're in the driver's seat. It's just I guess it's my car because it's the stream. But yeah. Anyway, I just want to say to any chatters that if in case he says anything super fucking contentious, it's not my fault. Okay. but I'm willing to
Yeah.
listen.
So
Hit me
yeah,
up.
the views of Adam something don't necessarily represent the views of Bosch. So yeah.
Maybe. I
So
mean, I don't
just
know. Maybe we'll see.
yeah. So just treat this as my input. So of course, different people have different perspectives. So I don't want this to sound like leftist infighting, as in like, I'm standing up here and like, the Linke aren't the real leftists, I'm the real leftist. No. Um, there's leftist infighting where we're like woke scolding each other or like, circular firing squad. But I believe in this case this is not valid because so you were right about the Nazbol vortex, as I said. It's just that it happens on a systemic sort of ideological party level and not on an AfD Linke voter transfer level. And this Nazbol vortex, or like this connection between the two, manifests itself in anti-liberalism and being just generally anti-West. And so
Gotcha.
this is why I worry a bit about Three Arrows, because like I like his stuff. Like I don't know much about him. Like I glanced up on his content. I don't. But for example, in the video he talked about policies around NATO and basically NATO, and without ever mentioning the currently ongoing war in Donbas, fueled entirely by Russia. It's a bit sus. It's an active warfare on European soil, which is currently ongoing, waged by an autocracy against a democratically elected European state. And so NATO is kind of a big deal here because, I mean, without NATO, all right. So it was me. It was a bit sus. Sorry. Go ahead.
From an American perspective, as I understand it, support for NATO is really common in in the EU because many European citizens are under the impression that by keeping NATO up, which America, largely foots the bill for, we subsidize their military defense, and therefore they can spend more of their GDP on social programs rather than on like a strong defense. Whereas otherwise, like NATO essentially like is a blanket protection they feel from like a lot of Eastern aggression, and it frees up their budgets. That's, as I understand it, like a lot of Europeans feel that way, even like fairly left-leaning Europeans.
Well, I don't know if most Europeans have this sort of clarity about it. Of like, oh yeah, NATO is a good thing because America foots the bill and it frees up our budget. I think it's more of a safety thing and like responding to global challenges. And here I'd like to make a note that I am in favor of a unified European military. Like if you watch my European federalization video, then I absolutely think that the European armies should be sort of consolidated into one big, commonly commanded structure.
As long as Turkey is not allowed in, okay? I'm mad at them right
Yeah. Or unless, or at least until Erdogan is around, who knows?
now. Just checking. Anyway, sorry, go on.
No worries. So, not mentioning the currently ongoing Russian aggressions in Europe, without when talking about NATO, it's kind of like someone holding a lecture about the founding of America without ever mentioning or alluding to even slavery. At some point you just go, wait, hold on, wait a second, aren't you forgetting something? Wait a second, PragerU, hi, like is that kind of kind of energy?
With regards to De Linke's positions on NATO?
Well, hold on, let me elaborate. Allow me to read this very brief quote. This is from the opening years of World War II from British so-called pro-appeasement politicians. They tried to, in the beginning, some people had the idea that, okay, if we just appease Hitler, if we just give him what he wants, he'll eventually stop and there's going to be peace on the continent. They were the centrists of the time, basically, or something similar. And so this quote goes as follows. This is after the start of World War II and everything that happened before. So, we need immediate proposals for improving English-German relations. In the League of Nations, the United Kingdom must reject the extension of the sanctions against Germany. A new conference on security and cooperation in Europe must take into account the changed conditions in Europe, involve the USA and Canada, and be prepared on the basis of the League of Nations. We oppose ideas of a quote-unquote regime change in Germany and are against all unproven accusations and propaganda actions intended to fuel hostility between Germany and the rest of Europe. This, of course, does not speak to how we feel about German politics. We take a critical view of the policies of German Chancellor Adolf Hitler, particularly with regard to the domestic situation, but also with regard to Germany's role in international conflicts such as Poland or Czechoslovakia. We do not endorse unilateral partisanship and condemnations, but of course Germany, like the rest of Europe, also follows its own economic and geostrategic interests in its international politics. Crazy, huh?
Well, I'm familiar with the language used of the appeasement types, right? It looks pretty fucking bad in hindsight. Well, it looked bad at the
Right.
time too, I think, but in
Actually,
hindsight,
yes.
it looks mega extra bad. You know? Are you
Right.
saying this is kind of comparable to the some attitudes taken towards like Russian aggression?
Yeah, and this is where I pulled the rug from under you, because this is actually the Linke talking about Russia. I just switched out some of the
Oh,
names and countries. And
oh,
this is after the war in Donbas, by the way. This is during.
wait.
Huh?
Okay, wait. What is the war in Donbas?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. So the war in Donbas is eastern Ukraine, basically. So after the, it's actually it's actually pretty amazing. It's ongoing to this day. But what happened in Ukraine in 2013, 2014 was, I mean, it was unprecedented. And I'm going to make I'm planning on this massive video essay, which I'm going to put out at some point, trademark. So the gist of it is that it all started with the Ukrainian president at the time, Viktor Yanukovych, not signing the association agreement with the EU, preferring Russia instead. However, because of this, there were a whole bunch of like pro-European mass demonstrations, against corruption and everything, because people were pretty fucking, fed up with the government. Because it was like the bottom of the barrel at that point.
Yeah.
Right, and so this culminated in Yanukovych actually fleeing the country, and this caused this huge instability in the country. There was basically no government, and a pro-Ukrainian, pro-European revolution happened. Meanwhile, one third to half the country is supposedly pro-Russian. So yeah, you have no fucking idea who's what side, who's going to take what side, and so during this sort of weakened state, but basically like a semi-violent transfer of power, Russia exploited this and, of course, took over Crimea, and then started funneling and funding and organizing separatists in eastern Ukraine, aiming to basically take over as much as they can. And of course, the original plan was that, so plan A was that Yanukovych wins and Ukraine stays within Russia's geopolitical interests. So, but that didn't work. So plan B was that, okay, through separatists, we're going to just make the country collapse because of weak governance, fleeting loyalty to the country, etc. So that didn't work. So plan C, we're going to take over eastern Ukraine. But that didn't really work. So then came plan D. They're going to take over the eastern industrial heartland and form a land bridge towards Crimea, which of course they took over with the polite green men. These are unmarked military personnel who just like appeared with like top tier Russian military hardware and just like took over everything.
This looks like
And
it
so,
fucking sucks, dude. Okay, I knew some of this stuff, but not all of it. I think. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I have thoughts real quick.
no worries. Go ahead.
Then I can learn more. It seems like it's difficult, I think, to imagine an expansionist empire like the Third Reich in the context of the modern world, because in the modern world, like you can annex like Crimea or whatever, but I mean, if Russia like marched into Poland, I mean, eventually there'd be nuclear war. I mean, you can only go so far with this stuff, but it seems like Russia's strategy. It seems to be like you influence a ton of political control over neighboring leaders until there are strongmen in countries bordering you that are in favor of you, or you pay protesters, or you incite disagreement, or you destabilize democratic systems, and eventually the country's in turmoil without you ever having to invade. And at that point, it's not an invasion; it's like half of the country calls you in to settle a dispute, and then that territory just becomes yours afterwards. Like it seems like the method by which you acquire territory has changed significantly because outright invasion is no longer, at least not always, an effective strategy. But this can only work so far, right? Like I don't think this strategy could never go past like it could never go past the Iron Curtain. It could never go past like Eastern Europe. There's no way something like this could happen to like a Western European country. I don't think.
Well,
So
not yes, yes, that's
not
true.
without huge changes to the way, like not without some massive shit happening. So do you think there's a risk of like Russia essentially reintegrating like the Warsaw Pact, except not as a Warsaw Pact, but rather as just a sort of ever expanding Russian blanket?
No, there's zero chance for that for now. Even with Ukraine, they couldn't really progress beyond like the red areas you see on the map.
Mhm.
That's all they could get at some point. At this point, plus Crimea, and they couldn't even get the land bridge between Crimea and the red area. Like if you look at the world map, it's there.
Right.
So this invasion, like this could only happen in a country in turmoil and with just these like weird historic ties to Russia and like just like huge Russian cultural influence there. And of course, surprise, surprise, because Ukraine isn't in NATO. So the reason why Ukraine wants into NATO so bad, and the reason why, for example, Baltic states support NATO so much, is because if they wouldn't be in NATO, I mean, Russia would have done the exact same thing with them. Because like, the thing about Russia is many people view Russia as like from this framework of Western liberal democracies. We have our common international framework of laws, etc. And gentlemen's agreements, sort of like this level of civilized international politics on top of realpolitik. But with Russia, it's like people have to understand, like Russia just doesn't give a fuck. It's like if Russia can do something without consequences, they're just gonna fucking do it. And their tolerance for this is much sort of higher than any developed nations. But anyway, Ukraine was the only country where they could partially do this. But what followed after the 2014 insurgencies and annexations, everything, Putin expected full on that the country will just fucking collapse because the industrial heartland is taken by separatists. The army was in shambles. Like I believe when this whole circus started, Ukraine had like in total, like a country of 44 million had like 2,500 combat ready troops. All the rest was fucking just like chaff.
Gotcha.
And right, and so it's just like it's just like a completely decayed like state of ruin, basically. However, what happened is that with Putin's actions, like this previously basically unprecedented this Ukrainian national revival happened, so to speak, and this Ukrainian national identity just like formed a basic like got forged in fire, I guess, and this like really like turned nationalism to 11 basically, and they actually managed to push back the separatists. So they control much more of eastern Ukraine, and then they pushed them back so far. But then Russia started involving like Spetsnaz and other like special forces to
Which
aid
is
the
somewhat harder
separatists.
to push back against.
Exactly. So when the separatists are using like top tier Russian weapons plus like Russian special troops, etc. A very good video about this is from Vice. It's called Selfie Soldiers. So they look up like Russian soldiers on VKontakte, which is Russian Facebook, and they geolocate their pictures, and they go there and they take the exact same picture. And as they go and take the pictures, they notice, what they do, we're in Ukraine. Oh, this was actually a frontline city. So, and then like it's basically confirmed that there was like some major military involvement. And this is what you were talking about. Like this is hybrid warfare. So all out declaration of war, etc. This doesn't work anymore. Instead of it, we have this hybrid bullshit of like. But this is of course very limited, because for that you need, for Russia, like for this to work, Russia needs a Russian minority in the area, or Russian speaking, which by the way Baltic countries have. In Baltic countries, it's like Russian minorities are like 20 to 30% or something.
Right.
So yeah, and those can be the casus belli basically. So this is why like Baltic countries are really in favor of NATO, and in Ukraine, the problem was that half the country was like Russian speaking and like tied to Russia culturally and historically, whatever, like by 1,000 ways. So there it was pretty like self-explanatory. But yeah, so what happened there basically, like, where are we now? Like 13,000 people dead or even more. Um, and like then now there's like there's a ceasefire which is in effect, but like separatists don't really give a shit. There's war crimes being committed regularly. Just yesterday, I think
It's a
the
big
militants like
Wikipedia article, Adam.
it's a huge one, yeah.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of stuff is happening over there.
Exactly. Like just yesterday, the militants captured the OSCE mission, like the OSCE, which is supposed to monitor the ceasefire. They're like holding, I think, two of them hostage because the Ukrainian army
What the
arrested one of their fellow
fuck?
militants.
So,
Uh,
sorry, I'm sorry, just 25 Ukrainian soldiers were killed in the conflict zone in the beginning of 2021. The
yep.
idea of like the idea of active soldier deaths in a conflict zone is just so utterly because that doesn't happen obviously in our country. I mean, in Germany and America, it always happens somewhere else, you know? The idea of having to
Yep.
fight that off like consistently. Is there any
Yep.
uh broader effort on the part of NATO nations to address or stop any of this? Or I mean, I know it's out of their jurisdiction, but I mean, are we illicitly funneling arms or any of the shit we typically do when we're trying to fight against Russia covertly? Or
Oh, sure. Like actually the US has been pretty helpful, and it's like billions of dollars in weapons shipment and everything. Like the Ukrainian army got a bunch of like pretty nifty American hardware, like Humvees, for example. And now they are like the army is transitioning to actually American like assault rifles from Kalashnikovs.
Mhm.
Like they bought the license and everything, so like they're now pretty okay, and they constantly, like the Ukrainian American, they constantly get support, like tangible material support. Ironically, under Trump was the when they actually started getting lethal weapons. Like before that, Obama was kind of like limb dicking around, like we don't want to give lethal weapons, just like defensive, etc. And then under Trump, like ironically, the like more hawkish wing of the party, they started supplying them with javelins, for example. Players of Call of Duty, of course, know what the javelins are. So they are supplied pretty well, I would say. And the Ukrainian army is generally in good condition now, or much better than it was.
I'm assuming
So
that given all this
yes, go ahead.
info, I'm assuming that you're in favor of NATO and you're probably in favor of supporting Ukraine in this conflict.
As long as Russia is in such a proximity and is such a threat, then absolutely. Like in the long run, of course, I would like to see changes to NATO. As I previously mentioned, on the basis of say a unified European army, and but for now, I mean, this is now it's necessary. And this is Wagner Group, which you have on screen, which is this basically unofficial Russian private army, which is like private army, but like does the bidding of Putin anyway.
It seems
And
so
they were
fucking
in,
weird that all this is to do with Russia. Like Russia
yeah,
collapsed,
exactly.
you know? It's a poor country. It's not it's just interesting to me that it would pose such a threat to the security of Europe and
Well, it's a middle power
more.
to this day. It's a middle power, and as they say, Russia is like an oil monarchy with nuclear weapons. So
Yeah. No, I know that it's not like any regular nation of its GDP. Obviously, the legacy of the Soviet Union and all the arms buildup and everything has probably significantly affected the trajectory of the country. It's just interesting, you know?
yes. And so here we tie into the Linke a bit because so with the Linke, we are in a situation where we got a group of self-identified leftists who are extremely quick to point out any failings of Western liberal democracies, with which I agree, by the way. But when it comes to autocrats like Putin, who happen to just oppose the West, then it's like, oh, we don't know. Lots of people say lots of things. There are many questions. We should cooperate. Da, 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 da. And it's like, dude, like, where's this fucking fervor that you criticize the West with? It suddenly disappears. It's like the West has the blood of every Afghani civilian on their dirty capitalist hands. Versus, did Assad really barrel bomb his own people with chlorine? Hey, I mean, they could have just left the building when the barrel fell inside. We don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they had the windows open. There's no way. Yeah, I'm very familiar with those talking points at least.
Yeah, so this is and this is exactly what's happening in a large part. Like, of course, I don't want to say that this is the entire Linke and this is the entire sort of this German leftist movement, because it's not, obviously. But what I'm saying is like there's like a worrying trend of like, we're just to give an off the wall example, we're all feminist in here. We all really like women's rights. By the way, we want to withdraw from the Istanbul Convention, which was this big women's rights thing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of sussy.
So
And so,
is
yes,
this
go
your
ahead.
primary opposition to Die Linke? The fact that you think that they are ambivalent towards or sort of abetting towards Russian aggression?
My problem is that they are not just ambivalent. Like if they were like milk toast limb dicking around like they'd say they would say, so it'd be like, okay, whatever. But so there's this sort of leftist conference which I've come across. This is the Rosa Luxembourg conference,
Mm-hmm.
and on this, like they invite sort of speakers there from leftist for the leftist cause, and among them in 2016 was one of the I believe guests and speakers, Alexei Markov, who was part of the communist branch of the Prizrak Brigade, which is one of the separatist groups fighting the Ukrainian government. This happened in 2016. So they actually there's this big fucking leftist conference, and they got this fucking separatist dude up there because he said he's a communist, and like this is like, we are leftists, so we are inviting essentially a terrorist fighting against a democratically elected European state,
Right.
backed up by a fucking autocrat. So this is, to me, like this is a level of red flag which I really, I I don't really, I cannot really get over this, that there's such support for like fascists essentially within the fucking Linke,
Do you
because
think
of
it's
course, like,
is
yes, go ahead.
do you think it's like a very vocal minority, or do you think it's representative of the general interest of the party? Because I've noticed that there were a lot of like especially like with online movements on the left, you have groups which are generally favorable, like they generally have good things to say. But because they're not very discerning with the leaders they choose, you'll have the lunatics rise to the top, and those lunatics can be like the Assadist types or the pro-China types or whatever the hell else, like that kind of thing. Do you think it's like a majority, or they're just bad at picking their leaders?
Well, that's a good question actually. Like in Germany in general is like more milk toast towards Russia than the rest of sort of Central Eastern Europe. But I've heard the fucking like the leadership of the Linke Party has said some pretty yikesy fucking stuff, and to the point where like it should be a deal breaker, ideally in a leftist movement. But like when your leader is like, is doing the Assad barrel bomb shit, um, and like, so I feel like that should be a deal breaker if we're like leftists, if we care about people, if we care about freedom and all that. But it's not, like those leaders are still there. So I mean, this worries me a bit, because how come in a leftist movement someone can make such a fucking statement and then stay in charge? So that might be indicative of some other undercurrents. Of course, I don't see into the Linke Party, but I induced from available evidence, and yes, inductive reasoning is not the same as deductive. So I hypocrite, take note. Anyway,
Oh, sorry, no, I'm reading up on the Twitter. This is it. Jorg Schindler.
Jörg Schindler, yeah, and there was another guy. Like, yeah, but he's
Yeah, I'm looking over the Twitter right now, and I'm coming to the startling realization that I don't actually speak German, so it's not
wow.
entirely
Well,
helpful with regards to discerning
right,
this guy's political views.
right click, translate.
On every tweet,
Doesn't it translate the whole page?
oh yeah, I guess it does. Sorry, I don't normally debase myself by reading non-English literature. Let me see.
Yeah.
I doubt that just scrolling through this I'm going to see anything especially bad, especially because a lot of bad stuff is kind of couched in implication, um, which I wouldn't be able to discern with Google Translate on random tweets. But no, I get what you mean. It would be
Yes.
it would be like having gray zone types in the leadership of your left party. Very very concerning.
Or yeah, or like Assadists, basically, or like people who they don't say that they're Assadists, but like every single political position that they hold, like a geopolitical position in terms of like foreign relations, all of them somehow, just by some fucking miracle, align perfectly with, say, Russian geopolitical interest. And it's anyway. So that's my problem with the Linke, that they really strike me as this like group of like just tankies essentially, who are extremely quick to just latch on to anything that they deem, say, anti-Western, because they oppose Western and bourgeois liberal democracies, and so they end up in a situation where they um, embrace autocrats. And it's the exact same thing as I think Kraut made a video about this. Oh yeah, I have it here. It's called "Embracing Tyranny to Own the Libs." And this was from the far right of like, there was the women's march, and people were like, oh yeah, dude, these fucking bitches, like if this was in based Russia, the police would have just like tear gassed them off the streets already. So yeah. And then Kraut made the point that, hey, by the way, did you know that fucking in Russia it's incredibly dangerous for women, and like domestic abuse laws were like loosened, and they were like pretty sort of resonant cases of like, like this, what was it, like a Russian TV presenter like beating his wife to death and coming nothing of it, and like some woman calling the local police that her husband was like attacking her, and then police just told her to fuck off, and then she died. And then just like domestic violence just like spiking, male on female.
Yeah.
And yeah, so this and this, but this is the political formation that the Linke support really. And when I see their, when I saw their little stickers this was during the previous elections, when I was in around Mannheim, I saw like, yeah, still leftist, still feminist, and it's like, dude, like you're pro Russia, by the way. Like, did you know that you're a feminist, but like your party is like pro Russia, and like they don't really, they're like pretty like pussyfooting around the Crimea issue, and so, which is, as far as I'm concerned, these things are the same as like pussyfooting around the fucking Holodomor or the Holocaust itself. So at that point you have to look at which point do you need to just like be like, okay, wait, hold on, stop, let's clarify a few things, because I think we really fucking need to.
Oh, I don't think there's anything wrong with being critical of stuff like that. You know, fuck, what's his name? Guys, who's that leftist, modern leftist theorist who's often compared and juxtaposed to Noam Chomsky? He's more tanky aligned. Parenti, yeah, Parenti, thank you. I know that Parenti basically lost faith in Bernie Sanders when Bernie Sanders apparently supported the NATO bombing of Yugoslavia. But if principled left people can't have move their alignments based on people's positions and stuff like that, I think this is a perfectly acceptable reason to be upset. But you've put me in a bit of a bad position, because now that I've heard two different opinions, I'm going to have to do independent research rather than stupidly listening to the last person to have spoken to me.
Damn.
Yeah, I know.
Well.
Why the fuck would you? Why? I already have enough on my plate, okay? Jesus, I'm trying to get up hardcore barbarian in Diablo 2. Do you
Right.
who did you vote for in the most recent elections?
I cannot vote in Germany. I have a Hungarian citizenship.
Oh, that's
I can
right.
only
That's right.
vote
Yeah,
in-
you're not. Yeah, okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, but I would have voted for the Greens, actually. Like, if anyone is looking for like a trustworthy sort of leftist party which actually opposes autocrats, then Greens in Germany. That would be it.
Did you what's the citizenship process in Germany? Do you intend on becoming a citizen, or are you just there sort of temporarily? Or...
I'm there for the time being, and then I'll be back in the Czech Republic. So I'm pan-European like that.
Gotcha. What about the I know that there are a lot of neo-Nazis in Ukraine, right? Are they like the other faction that would be taking over were it not for Russia's presence in the east? Or like, what is there like a good
really.
faction planned to take over Ukraine, or no?
It already happened, actually. Yeah, of course. Like so Ukraine so far had how they had two elections ever since this circus started, and the first election was sort of like born in fire, so to speak. So at that point, people just elected whoever the fuck was pro-European and anti-Russia, and that man was Petro Poroshenko, who was He was a Ukrainian oligarch. He has this like giant like food enterprise and everything. He is corrupt as shit. I don't like him, but he was like a civic nationalist. But like to his credit, he took Ukraine, like he sort of took Ukraine out of the crisis in the end. And then a semi miracle happened in like 2019, I believe, during the presidential elections and then later the parliamentary elections, where this guy called Vladimir Zelensky won the presidency, and then his party, Servant of the People, Sluha Narodi, won the elections, but like in a fucking landslide. And Zelensky himself is like I think he won like by the biggest margin in the history of Ukraine, and he himself is like he came from outside of politics. He was like he campaigned on like anti-corruption, populism, etc.
Right.
And he actually like he's Jewish, by the way, so you know it's that anti-Semitism I don't think really plays part here. And to this day he's in charge, and I think he's doing a fair enough job, all things considered. But with regards to the Nazi thing in Ukraine, there is certainly an element of that, like the Azov Battalion, as we all most of us might know who are familiar with the issue. The Azov Battalion is comprised of like these far right, ultra nationalist, etc. People. But the thing is, like outside of Ukraine, these groups, like that group, doesn't really have a reach. And the reason why they get so galvanized and so uppity is because, I mean, their fucking country is under attack. So you know, if you're an ultra nationalist, fond of weapons, fond of that sort of stuff, and then a foreign country invades you, I mean, that's part horrifying and part wet dream. You know, like finally. It's like the secret thing you've been dreaming about. And they actually, the thing about them was that they were actually a bit like difficult to coordinate because they just went their own way, kind of. However, they played some key roles in the conflict. So they actually were the most, like they had the most morale because they were, of course, fighting against they had a clear objective, fight against the enemy, etc. Of course, for all the wrong reasons, but still. And so their morale really helped a lot, I hear. And they were essentially the only ones for a long time who gained back any territory against separatists, as the Ukrainian army was just like reeling because of this, and because of the, like if imagine this, like you and 20 others are in a room, and you hear that the separatists are coming. And you look around and you have no fucking idea that out of these 20 people, who's going to join the separatists and shoot you in the back, or who's going to shoot at them. Because it was completely unclear whose allegiance is where.
Gotcha.
So
I feel like we're so out of the range of stuff that I have even a little bit of knowledge on that I have absolutely no way of like I have no intuitive opinion on any of this. I would have to do a lot of research, I guess. It wouldn't hurt for me to learn a little bit about the fucking powder keg that is everything in between Germany and Russia anyway.
Yeah. If you're interested, then there's this great video series, like Vice News had I think 2 videos are like, which are super great, which are during the actual revolution and protests. One was, I think, the first one was Ukraine, last days of the revolution, and then Ukraine burning. These are the 2 videos which are like really summarize the whole period. And
Gotcha.
then there's Vice, I think the Russian roulette series. It's like really fucking like 100 plus videos or something, but anyway, Wikipedia also suffices in this case.
Gotcha.
But yes,
we're reading on the Kosovo War now.
Oh god, no, fucking Serbs. Anyway, yeah, that was another, barrel of monkeys over there.
Yeah, it's just so weird seeing Eastern Europeans be racist to each other when none of them are like American. Like they're all like, exactly. What are you fighting over? You're all Eastern European. What do you what do you have? Know, right? Yeah, what? Yeah, like, why? what are you fighting over? Yeah. Fuck. God damn it. Okay, hold on. Wait, we have to stop. Okay, I've already mentally checkmarked like 17 things that I need to learn about. We have to stop. We have to stop right here, Adam.
It's all right. I don't want to overload you too much. You're an American after all.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, we have it's very ableist of you to try to load us up with foreign policy knowledge. Jesus Christ. Yeah,
Yeah.
Balkan ultranationalism is really fucking strange. I know they get hyper obsessive over it. Whenever you go online, you can see them freaking out at each other. Shit.
The Balkan is a different story though. Like Ukraine is more like east, like Russia's
Right. I
doorstep, and
know, I
the
know.
Balkan is Balkan. Yeah.
But Russia's definitely. I mean, yeah, Russia's like it had hands and stuff all around the place.
Oh,
Uh,
of course, Serbia and Greece. Yes.
yeah. Fuck. Okay. Look, I need to read up more on this stuff, and then after that, I'll probably want to talk to you again about it. Okay.
All right, all right. So do a research stream or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I might have
No,
to.
it doesn't hurt because this kind of subject, especially the current Russo-Ukrainian war, is I think a very useful lens to view the politicians and movements through, because like their view on this issue can tell a lot about the movement itself. So it's a very good like litmus test, so to speak.
Okay.
Yeah, but to sum up, just a quick summary then. So once again, my issue with the whole three arrows discussion, which I think was super cool and productive. My problem was that I think the elephant in the room wasn't really addressed, which is the fucking currently ongoing active warfare against Ukraine by an autocracy, against a democratic state on European soil in 2021. Like I feel like this is kind of a biggie, and to talk about NATO and like such things without ever mentioning it is like fucking Ben Shapiro giving a 2-hour lecture about civil rights in America without ever once mentioning Black Lives Matter. It's like Ben.
All right. I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah.
I guess it's difficult. I know that Europeans probably have a much more intimate understanding of the perceived threat that Russian imperialism has. See, over here, it's always been abstract, right? I mean, even during the Cold War, over here in the United States, it was more just the nebulous threat of a bad guy on the opposite end of the world. Not so much like you can look at a map and just see the border, and it's like 1,000 miles away from your border, and that's where fighting is happening.
Exactly. So, by the way, where I lived in Hungary, currently I could take a train and like transition once from my hometown in Hungary and be on the front line in Ukraine. So
that's kind of fucking spooky.
Yeah, it's like I'm 2 train tickets away, so yeah, that's it.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm gonna read up on this. I appreciate you giving me an alternate perspective and spurring me to action. All right.
No, of course, of course. Hey, I'm gonna put out the Ukraine video at some point in the near future, which is within the next 6 years or 2 months, depending. And you can also watch that. What I'm gonna do is basically I'm gonna just break down the entire process from the start of the protests until today to like give an overview, so that people will not be sort of underinformed or misinformed, etc., about the issue.
Well, I'll watch it as soon as it comes out. Thank you again. And again, I would shout out your channel, but you're bigger than me now, so I don't know. It feels.
Feel free to shout me out. I'll shout you out as well. We're the same ballpark, so
yeah, for now. Jesus, not in a month from now. Anyway, Adam Something's video slaps, guys, so you should all look at it when you can. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on, man. I hope to talk to you in the future.
Yep, me too. Thanks for having me on. So have a good stream and talk to you later, I guess.
I'll talk to you soon.
Yep. Bye-bye.